The movies I watched in March. What about them? It was a pretty slow month for me, with less watches than usual. The month was filled with mostly new releases, some classics, and the continuation of a franchise. So let's get into it. Please help your favorite average movie guy get to 1,000 subscribers by subscribing right now. Mickey 17, 2.5 out of 5. I started off my month with a cinema visit with Bong Joon-ho's follow-up to Parasite, which follows Mickey Barnes, an expendable crew member on a space colonization mission, who is repeatedly cloned after death. By the rating, you can see that it was a pretty disappointing return for Bong Joon-ho. The idea and much of the backdrop is cool, but where some are calling it subtle, to me it is way too on the nose and it ends up being overly long, repetitive, and very by the numbers, while it gave you the idea that there would be more to it. Many of the different acts of the film have their own problems. That narration in the first act was just way too much, making it pretty weak and distracting, while the whole plot from Mickey 18 onwards in Act 2 and 3 doesn't really make sense. How is he so different from Mickey 17 while they are literally the same person printed over and over again? Even if it is explained somewhere vaguely, when 18 dies, the next Mickey will be like 17 again, not like 18. So Mickey 17 will just live on. So when you narrate the whole damn story, narrate this explanation to us, which is the most important thing to know. Because when the whole film hangs on dumb character choices and something that seems logical, you get distracted by it and never fully get invested in the film. The film looks pretty cool, is shot well and somewhat thought out, especially the little printing details were a great addition, but some of the visual effects weren't up to par. Pattinson is very not Pattinson, a testament to his acting. Colette is pretty okay as her over-the-top self, while Ruffalo acting over the top just doesn't work to me. Didn't in Poor Things and didn't here. I'll always give a little plus for originality, but the story also weighs the most for me, and that just didn't land. It isn't inherently terrible, but compared to expectations and what it is trying to do, it simply is. The Apartment, 5 out of 5. My next watch was a 1960s Best Picture winner, about an ambitious office worker who lends his apartment to executives for their affairs, but complications arise when he falls for his boss's mistress. It's pretty great, you know, movie-wise. I hope you caught that reference. The film starts off like a somewhat lighthearted and semi-dark comedy satire, but grows into something special with a serious subject matter. Prostituting yourself for personal gain. Cece Baxter might be one of the best written and played characters I've seen in film in a while. Funny but deeply tragic and somewhat morally corrupt at the same time. My only gripe with the characters is with Miss Kubelik, who is also a deeply interesting character but a little less nuanced and written a little more contradictory compared to her actions. How good everything is, the film is eventually mostly held together by strong dialogue, witty remarks and great callbacks. Makes me look the way I feel. One of the many absolutely brilliant lines. Everything that is said just feels so real and natural, which is even more notable for a film from that time. To me, the film felt perfectly paced, with the right things happening at the right moments. They simply don't make films like this anymore. It is probably one of the best, more serious-minded comedies I've ever seen. Pirates of the Caribbean, at World's End, 3.5 out of 5. Next up, my girlfriend and I continue with the third film in the Pirates franchise, which follows Jack Sparrow's allies as they unite with pirate lords to battle the East India Company and Davy Jones. In the words of Davy Jones, it is pretty okay, yeah. The world itself is as mysterious and magic as always, but the story is more convoluted and messy than ever. It weirdly enough feels extremely long, simply due to the long runtime, but also feels rushed because they do so many different things in short amounts of time. From a certain moment, it just gets extremely hard to follow. I did, however, love the first act, and a stylistic intro, showing that Pirates is a little more than just Jack Sparrow. The film also looks gorgeous as ever, from the VFX to the sets and the scenery. Davy Jones is again breathtaking to look at, but as a character downgraded to a simple henchman. What a disappointment. He was pretty much the most interesting part of the previous film. The performances are generally good, albeit more theatrical. However, Pintel and Rigetti are more annoying and unnecessary than ever, while Orlando Bloom hasn't gotten any better since the last film. To be honest, I have hardly ever seen him act well in a film. In general, it's an okay third film in the franchise, but definitely a slight downgrade compared to the first two. The Order, 3 out of 5. Next up, I caught this film on Amazon Prime, which follows an FBI agent as he hunts down a violent white supremacist leader and his extremist group. It is truly nothing special, it doesn't stand out in any way, It would be a good flick back in the day, but is a little too familiar today. The film is pretty to look at and the story starts off interesting, but it gets a little stale and dull pretty quickly. The characters are what keeps you interested, and honestly, it actually got me to care somewhat. Jude Law is pretty one note, but fantastic in that one note. That one scene with the money truck is great. You can see pure fear and emotion in his eyes. For Nicholas Hoult, the same, very one note, but good. It is a film that is not inherently good or bad. You can hate it for being somewhat by the numbers, but you can't hate it for lacking quality, because it has some of that. The Gorge, 2 out of 5. The next film I watched was on Max, which follows two elite snipers stationed on opposite sides of a mysterious chasm who must join forces when a deadly hidden threat emerges. One of the most tonally weird films I have seen in a while. Both parts of the film work a little, especially the first half, but the combination doesn't so much. Where a film like Parasite does this switch brilliantly, here it makes it feel like two not totally satisfiable stories. The interaction between the two characters were quite entertaining, and while it wasn't always engaging, it was a pretty interesting and original love story in the first half, which was then turned into a generic, somewhat entertaining action sci-fi extravaganza. The amount of exposition, some weird VFX work, the bad final 20 minutes, and the many illogical factors in the context of the film also don't help the film's case in being somewhat good. Novocaine, 4 out of 5. I caught the next film in the cinema again. It follows Nate Kane, a man with no sense of pain, who navigates a dangerous mission to rescue his kidnapped colleague and love interest. It is Nepo Baby versus Nepo Baby, where Dennis, Jack Quaid is pretty good, while Ray Nicholson is pretty bad, which is pretty much the big problem with the film, a weak villain. Ray Nicholson gives a performance that is so one note that it almost feels like a parody. The film itself is incredibly fun and entertaining, while also being incredibly dumb at the same time. However, within this dumbness, it is pretty clever, looking at everything the film does with its premise. The only other real issue is the last act, which drags on extensively. There are like 3 endings here. However, the first 2 acts were so balls to the wall entertaining that they make up for most of the flaws of the film. The Electric State, 1.5 out of 5. My last watch of the month was on Netflix, with the film following an orphan teenager named Michelle traveling through a retro-futuristic 1990s America with a mysterious robot to find her long-lost brother. To be honest, the film is a pretty big waste of a great cast, while I don't even think the whole cast was that good. Millie's performance felt especially flat for most of it. You can literally feel that she is not talking to anyone when talking to that damn robot. Speaking of the robots, the film does have some great visuals and aesthetics, as well as a good soundtrack. But that's not everything a film is about. It is just so very exposition heavy, for example on characters, but also by explaining why everything is as it is. Show us, don't tell us, it's screenwriting 101. This made the first 20 minutes feel extremely long and also made it so that there was a surprising amount of standing around and talking, and not that much action for an action-adventure film. To be honest, it just couldn't keep my attention, something which I value a lot in a film. The world seems interesting, but the story in the world is very by the numbers. I had to try a couple different times and was already forgetting what happened while watching the film, which is not a great look for the film, in my opinion. And that's it for my movie watches this month. These were my best and worst watches of the month. I hope you guys enjoyed me rambling about some films I watched. If you did, be sure to check out my other videos and subscribe for more videos like these. I've been Dean, the average movie guy on your screen. Big thanks for watching, see you next time. Roll the credits.